record this. Great. So happy to see you all here today. Let me tell you a little bit about this group. We started the accelerators early in 2020 with a very small but mighty group of about 6 people. We have now grown to over 500 strong. And what we have is a private LinkedIn community that is strictly for job seekers. You are welcome to join, but it's by invitation only. So if you want to join, then I need to approve you, which is great. You can either connect with me, and Lori's going to put my URL into the chat so that you can connect with me, or you can simply ask to join the Accelerator group. We host events like this once a month. We always have a great speaker that speaks to us about some topic or other, and I'll talk to you about what Jeffrey's going to talk about today and what we have coming up for September. But I am excited to host this group. I have been honored to be a part of it since the very beginning. I have helped people with their resumes. I have helped people with their interview prep. I have helped people with their LinkedIn profiles, whatever it takes to get you to the next level. And as Darren said, he's still accelerating. And we should all be accelerating our careers at all times. And so I just love the name of this group, and I love being a big part of it. We will be posting the video of this call, the recording of this call, on our YouTube channel. And so I want you to watch for the post that's going to come out tomorrow. It's going to have the link to the video if you want to watch it again, or if anyone misses it, we have it there for you. Also, we encourage everyone to put golden nuggets in the chat, because I take those golden nuggets and I create the post that I'll hopefully send out tomorrow or the latest by Friday. That way, people who have missed it will get to see some of the key phrases, the key learnings that Jeffrey's going to share with us today. And I get to see your perspective of what's important to you. It's really important for our future guests as well. I would like you to mark your calendars for September 6th. On September 6th is our next accelerator call. We generally have them the first Wednesday of the month, with some exceptions, but in September, it is September 6th. And we're hosting Al Smith, who calls himself the hired guy. And he's going to answer the question, can a recruiter find you? It's a really simple question, but really involved. And he's going to go into the LinkedIn algorithm. He's going to show you how to do some Boolean searches to see what recruiters are looking for, and to make sure that all the hard work that you're putting into your LinkedIn profile, all the hard work that you're doing to be visible, is actually being seen. That should be an excellent call. I like to start September off with a really strong speaker. A few lucky participants may even get their LinkedIn profiles reviewed by Al, and he will give you some tips on how to get visibility on LinkedIn. So if you want to participate, Lori has already put the link in to register. It's open now, the registration. And if you would like to be one of the participants who's called upon to have their LinkedIn profile reviewed, just drop me a note. Just drop me a line and say, hey, Mindy, count me in. I'll be there and I want to have mine reviewed. Okay, that'll be great. So today, we are continuing our summer tradition, and our summer tradition for the accelerators is to ask people who are former job seekers to come back and share their perspective with our current job seekers. And last summer, Darren was part of that group that shared his perspective with us. And so we like to continue that summer tradition. Jeffrey is an alumni of Accelerators. He was a job seeker not too long ago. And he has gone from job seeker to job winner. And he has documented his journey so that he can share it with you and other job seekers. And I think that's so important that we learn, we grow, and then we share with others. That's everything that I'm about. We learn, we grow, and we share with others. That's how we all get better every day. Do you all agree with that? Okay. If you're here, congratulate yourselves. You're taking your first step towards greater acceleration of your career. Give yourself an applause. Clap your hands to yourself. Congratulations. I'm going to turn the mic over to Jeffrey. He has a presentation that he's going to share with you. And we're going to highlight that presentation and highlight Jeffrey so that you can see him. By the way, Jeffrey is encouraging questions. He doesn't want you to hold back your questions. He would like you to ask questions during his presentation. And so if you have a question, please put it in the chat. Just put in caps the questions that you have. Or if you prefer to speak to Jeffrey, you see that little reaction button towards the bottom? Just go in here and raise your hand. And that's going to get you to the highest level so we can see you to answer your questions. Okay. Let me just pull my chat up so I can see this. Give me 1 second. Okay. Jeffrey, I'm going to turn it over to you. And
okay.
Welcome to the Accelerator. So happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. First, can you see my screen?
Yes, I see it.
And can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Fine.
Can everyone
Okay,
hear?
so thank you very much. So first of all, Mindy, thank you for having me to speak. I appreciate it. If you're not already connected or following Mindy, you should do that. I did, very helpful. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time it is if you're watching on the replay. I wanted to thank everyone for attending, and I do encourage questions as I go along. So a couple of things. You might be thinking, or as Mindy alluded to, why did I put this presentation together? Just a little background on that before I talk a little about me and then go into the presentation. There are a lot of great thought leaders like Mindy and others on the internet and in LinkedIn, but I didn't see a lot specifically on, let's say, the mechanics of how to use LinkedIn to find a job, or in terms of a methodology. And full disclosure, I've gotten laid off more than once in my career, and I've used LinkedIn to find a new job. So most everything that you see in this presentation, I've learned from personal experience or doing research. This is a subset of a much larger presentation, about 45 minutes or so of a 90-minute presentation. Please get the full presentation for all of the information. I will tell you, I've probably violated every rule of good presentations in that a lot of the screens are very dense. They have a lot of words, and the intent was to make this more of a reference than necessarily a presentation that you could go back and hopefully find useful. Having said that, let me just tell you a little about me. I'm not going to read through all of this. This is my one-pager. If you don't have one, you might want to consider creating one, and we can talk offline about that. But I've been in the IT space for 30 plus years, 30. I think most of us are kind of in that almost age range. But in my 30 plus years, my first 10 years, I've had a technical role at IBM. And then the remaining 20 years, I've had various sales roles, hardware, software, and services. I spent about 25 years at IBM, 6 years at Oracle, about 2 years at Avnet, and about most recently 2 years at Red Hat. Ultimately, I decided I wanted to do something else, so I'm currently working for a nonprofit South Florida tech hub. I am based in sunny Boca Raton, Florida. The reason I say that is everything, and let's go ahead and, everything I kind of go through here is from the perspective of the IT industry, mostly from a sales kind of perspective. And we'll talk a little more about that. So agenda, I think it's important to let you know what I'm going to go through and maybe what I'm not going to go through. I'm a big fan of quotes. I'm not going to have time to go through that. All of the things I don't go through are in the larger presentation. I will go through some general background disclaimer. Then I'll explain why I'm using that phrase, can you handle the truth? Hopefully everybody gets the movie reference, but we'll talk about that. I'll talk about leveraging internal contacts, advocates versus ATS. I have some kind of strong feelings about ATS. We'll talk about company website postings, LinkedIn job postings, and user-initiated LinkedIn job alerts. I'll give you my view on open to work. That's sometimes different schools of thought there. Talk a little about LinkedIn Recruiter. And if you forget everything I say going forward, what I call the open profile loophole is probably the most important and most useful. It's taken me a long time to really understand what that is. And you may not have heard of that. It's not intuitively obvious, not well documented. I'm not going to go through some suggested best practices. I mentioned thought leaders. I'm not going to have time to go through that. Follow and connect with Mindy. And as I mentioned, please ask your questions as we go along. And in the bigger deck, I've probably got 30 to 35 slides on additional information that I think you'll find useful. Okay, so LinkedIn, behemoth of an application, 950 million users, ever changing. I did recently do a major update to this deck, so everything should be fairly current, but it's ever changing. You may or may not be aware of this, given the size. LinkedIn actually exists in multiple instances around the world. So some of the screens that I have screenshots of may actually look different to you because you're in a different instance. The other thing is I'm assuming intermediate knowledge of LinkedIn here, and I'm also assuming you're a premium user, which we'll talk a little more about later. I've, in my career, mostly been an individual contributor, not been a people manager. I've always worked in the commercial for-profit space, except for this current job. So that's my perspective. Individual contributor, IT, Fortune 1000 type companies. When I say recruiter, I'm talking about recruiter that works for the company that has posted the role, either on LinkedIn or their website, not a third-party recruiter or staffing agency. Again, my background, Fortune 1000, IT for-profit, primarily from technical or sales, customer-facing role. Should apply to most industries, but it may not. And again, this is just my opinion. And hopefully you'll find it useful, but ultimately you've got to do, whatever you feel comfortable with. So what do I mean by can you handle the truth? And the movie reference is from A Few Good Men. And there's a famous scene from Jack Nicholson. If you've never watched the movie, it's worth finding it. It's really a great movie, and it stands the test of time. So having been in the IT space for a long time, having looked for roles, having talked to a lot of recruiters, a lot of hiring managers, and other people looking for roles, I've kind of developed some thoughts here. So in my view is if you're currently not working and you're looking for a job, it really is a full-time job. And I suggest you view it as such. Possibly from my background, and I've talked to a lot of different people, and it seems that this isn't, the second bullet isn't well appreciated. I viewed, when I was looking for a job, effectively my own marketing or sales campaign. And the product I was trying to sell was me. And an interview was, a sales call or an interview, I'm sorry. An interview is really a sales call of selling the product, which was me. And this is true whether you're looking for a technical role, a role in government, an HR role. You're selling yourself. I've talked to a lot of technical people or other people and say, Jeffrey, I'm not a salesperson. I can't sell myself. I said, well, you need to kind of change your mindset because effectively that's what you're doing. Finding a new job is a numbers game, and the numbers aren't always in your favor, but that's the reality here. One of the courses I took in college was, and this was pre-internet, was in direct marketing. And something that's always stuck with me, one of the professors said that when you are doing direct marketing, if you get a 3 to 5% response, it's considered successful. So I raised my hand and I said, excuse me, are you saying that if I mailed out 100 pieces of mail and I only got 3 to 5 pieces back, which would be the 3 to 5%, that would be considered a successful campaign? And he said, absolutely. So I thought about that a lot, and I've turned it around and I've kind of applied it to looking for a job, in that if 3 to 5% response is considered successful, then a 95 to 97% rejection rate is normal. And I've kind of taken that mindset. The reality is you're going to get rejected for a lot of roles. It's just part of the reality of looking for a job. And that's kind of what I mean by the change in your mindset so you can kind of realize what's going on, and that's the truth is the situation. The other bullet there is if you've ever been in sales, and let's say you had a quota, I'll just pick a number of $100,000. The general rule of thumb is you need a pipeline 5x your quota. So in this case, it'd be $500,000, because you're not going to, close every deal. So I've transposed that and said, well, if you're looking for one job, you really should be working multiple jobs in parallel, hopefully 5, because that's what you're going to need to ultimately land a role. The last 2 bullets I've learned over the years, and it's taken me a long time to really understand this. And I do think this is the reality here. And I tell people that good news or bad news from a commercial Fortune 1000 perspective, by the time a role is posted externally, at least 50% or higher, the company really already has either an internal or an external candidate, usually an internal candidate, already in place for the role. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's reality. And a lot of times companies just post the role because they have an internal HR requirement to post the role, or if they're, let's say, doing work for the federal government or state local government, oftentimes they have to post every role. So unfortunately, at least 50% of the jobs that are posted, by the time you see them publicly, there really is already a candidate in place. Related to that is that most jobs, hiring managers and recruiters are looking for internal references first, rather than external job seekers, even though they may have posted the role. And I've talked to enough hiring managers and recruiters that, again, typically 50% or higher of roles get filled by referrals, not by job postings, either on the company's website or LinkedIn. So oftentimes people will ask me and say, Jeffrey, I've applied to 100 jobs and I haven't got a response. I've sent out 100 resumes. And I go through this. Well, look at the numbers. You're not going to get a lot of response. You're going to get rejected. That's the reality here. So think of a 3 to 5% response rate as being good. So that's kind of shocking for a lot of people, but that's what I found is the reality, and that's what I'm kind of saying. This is the reality as we go forward. Okay, kind of related to that, if you think you're just going to apply for a job and get a response back either on LinkedIn or company website, honestly, unfortunately, I think you're being naive. It just doesn't happen. You're going to go into a black hole. There's more to it than just applying and hopefully getting a response. Those days are long gone. In my opinion, and you want to get other people's opinion, I talk to a lot of people, and it seems a lot of people try to rewrite their resume for each role to try to outsmart the applicant tracking system. Personally, I don't think that's a good use of your time. I'm not saying you shouldn't tweak your resume or add in keywords that are relevant for a job, but I've talked to a lot of people that spend a lot of time rewriting their resume for different roles. Personally, I don't think you're ever going to outsmart the applicant tracking system, just my opinion. I think you're better off following my methodology and trying to leverage LinkedIn versus spending a lot of time trying to outsmart, so to speak, an applicant tracking system. I kind of taken the assumption I'm not going to receive a response through the traditional application process. Again, that's kind of a change in mindset. So you might be saying, okay, Jeffrey, you've told me what not to do. What do you suggest I do? Well, I think you can leverage LinkedIn to find internal contacts or advocates. And that's what I've done. And just for clarity, in order of importance, you ultimately want to get to the hiring manager first. If you can't get to the hiring manager, you want to find who the recruiter is. If you can't find the recruiter, find someone in talent acquisition. Just going in blind, not knowing who the hiring manager, the recruiter, or someone in talent acquisition, you're very low on your potential success and even getting an interview for the job, in my opinion. So how do you go about that? Well, see if you have a connection through LinkedIn with the company, or do you have a connection that they may have a connection? Ask them if they can identify the hiring manager. The other thing I did a lot of was I looked in the job posting for a title of the role, and I would search in LinkedIn for someone that currently had that role. And I would ask them, can you tell me who the hiring manager is? You may be thinking, Jeffrey, I can't reach out to people that I've never met, that don't know me, and ask who the hiring manager is. Well, sure. Not everybody is going to respond to you. A lot of people are going to ignore you. But I will tell you, I'm continuously surprised that, and this may be because I'm speaking a lot to other salespeople. If you just come out and ask them, a lot of people you don't know, you've never met, will tell you who the hiring manager is, or at least the recruiter is. So you're way ahead of the game if you can find who the hiring manager, recruiter, or talent acquisition is. The other thing I've done is if I can't find another employee, I'll look for a current hiring manager at the company that might have that title, and just come out and say, look, I'm applied for this role. We've not met. Are you the hiring manager? If not, can you tell me the email and name of who the hiring manager is? Again, you might be thinking, you can't be serious. You don't know these people. You're reaching out totally out of the blue. Again, you will be surprised how many times I've gotten hiring managers respond back. Yes, a lot of people ignore me. A lot of people don't respond. That's back to the 95 to 97% rejection rate. You only need 3 to 5% of the people to respond back to give you the contact name. If you're not comfortable, asking who the hiring manager is, ask who the recruiter is. You don't want to reach out to a recruiter and ask them who the hiring manager is, because they don't like that. You're kind of going around them. But it's certainly fair to ask a recruiter, are they the recruiter for this role? And if not, can you tell me the name and the email of who the recruiter is? I can assure you, based on my experience, well, I shouldn't say I can assure you, based on my experience, I do get a lot of people that have responded. And I have some example suggested wording later in the deck. Okay. So
Jeffrey,
yes.
I'm going to pause for a moment.
Sure.
I want to go back to one thing you said, and everything that you're saying is gold. And I'm thrilled to see these nuggets coming up in the chat. This is excellent. But I do want to be cautious about telling people not to outsmart the ATS.
Yep.
What we need to be doing is be smart enough to give the ATS what they're looking for. And what they're looking for are those keywords, which you did allude to. So I don't want anyone to think that they shouldn't be customizing their resumes for individual jobs. They should be looking at job postings, and they should be looking at what the company is looking for.
Right.
Not to outsmart the applicant tracking system, but to even be considered. We need to be using our keywords and using the words that are in those job descriptions, job postings rather.
Right.
Those job postings are gold. It's like mining for gold when you look at a job posting. That is not something you should be glossing over, but rather something you should be digging into. So I just want to be clear. We have a lot of people on the call who might be saying, oh, Jeffrey says we don't have to think about the ATS. That's not true. We do have to think about the ATS because we're really creating a resume for two audiences: the applicant tracking system, the machine, and the human being.
Yeah, I may have not focused. I think I did say certainly put in keywords. Yes, that's critical. Maybe I need to rewrite that a little. What I'm kind of saying is, yes, you should spend the time to tweak your resume to be aware of the ATS. But I've talked to a lot of people that think if they rewrite their resume, they're going to be able to bypass the ATS. So I'm agreeing with you as well. Yes, and I'm sorry if I minimize that. Definitely, you need to put in keywords.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry if I wasn't clear on that. Okay. Companies post jobs on their website. I'm old enough to remember when there was no LinkedIn. I'm old enough to remember where you could sometimes look for jobs in a newspaper, physical paper. So when LinkedIn came along, companies don't post every single job they have on their website on LinkedIn because they have to pay for those job postings. So I've kind of taken that around and said, okay, if a company, a lot of the jobs they're really already have an internal candidate and they in mind that, but they have to pay to post the job on LinkedIn. Well, maybe they don't have a candidate. Maybe they are more interested in an external candidate. So just keep in mind that what's on the LinkedIn is usually a subset of what's on the website. They're not going to post all their jobs because they have to pay for them. Just haven't looked at a lot of job postings, and I have some funny examples in the bigger deck. A lot of the job postings are poorly written or they have cut and paste fail. So like Mindy said, you've got to read the job postings in detail because there's some nuggets you can find in the job postings, especially on LinkedIn, for example, who the hiring manager or the recruiter is that they don't post on the company website. I've seen job postings that they don't have a picture of the person, but it's buried in the text at the bottom. So you've got to read them. Oftentimes the title geography doesn't match. That was an issue for me because I was really looking for a remote virtual US job. Titles can differ. Yeah, I think I've said everything. Read the job postings. I completely agree with Mindy. There's a lot of information there. Don't gloss over. Okay, job alerts. Job alerts are, to me, more of an art than a science, because there's not a human being providing you these job alerts. It's done by augmented intelligence, machine learning. By the way, if you aren't aware, about 10 years ago, I think Microsoft bought LinkedIn. So embedded in all of LinkedIn is all of the tools and technologies available to Microsoft. So I think it's something to be aware of. It's more of an art than a science. I had someone give me a good example that renewable energy and clean energy might be the same thing to you and me, but you get different results apparently in job alerts. So just be aware of that. Typically you use common keywords. There's a concept you may or may not be aware of that the US Census uses, or the Metropolitan Statistical Area, MSA. So if you're searching by geography, you might want to use that. I've included some links. The other thing I've learned and I've read about, it's generally, if you're going to use a geographic area, and you're not going to use US remote virtual, pick the largest geographic area or MSA that you can. So for example, here in South Florida, if you look for geography, you'll see Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. So Miami, Fort Lauderdale is a bigger geographic area, so that's the better one to pick. Turning it around, if you want to get the AI ML to work for you, if you don't already have a premium subscription, I think it's worth getting a premium subscription. One of the things that the AI ML will do for you, and I have it highlighted here, it will show you jobs where it thinks you're a top applicant. That's the AI ML working for you, not maybe against you in an ATS. If you're not aware of this, Mindy alluded to the algorithm that LinkedIn uses. It takes in everything you do on LinkedIn, what you like, what you post, what jobs you apply for, what you read, how long you read. It takes all that in, not only for your news feed, but it takes that in and tries to use the AI ML to present you with jobs that you think would be interested in. I will tell you, I've been presented with jobs because I am a premium user that never showed up in my job alerts that I thought were a pretty good fit. So we can worry about Skynet and ChatGPT, but you can also use it to your leverage in this example. So I wanted to mention that. There is some debate.
Jeffrey, there is a
Yes.
question. I know you said you wanted to do the questions as you were
Sure.
going along. And the question, I just have to scroll up a bit. Give me a second. I think it's from Randy, asked the question of, once you find the hiring manager, what do you recommend that we do next?
Okay, I got some actual examples of that later in the deck.
Perfect.
And if you pay me a nickel every time you use it, you can use the actual text. And I've worked with a lot of text, and the text usually works, but we'll get to that. Great question. There is some debate on whether you should use open to work. My opinion is, if you're really looking for work, leverage what LinkedIn provides to you. I know there's different schools of thought. There is a way you can, there's a setting that says it doesn't show up in public. Let's say let's say you currently have a job, but you're looking for a new job. You may not want to promote publicly that you're looking for a job. There's a setting there that only theoretically recruiters will see the open to work. I've read that works fairly well. So my view, if you're looking for a job, turn your open to work on. I know there are differing opinions. This article, Jan is being facetious. The article talks about why you should use open to work. Very, very good. So take a look at that.
Jeffrey, I'm going to jump in for a moment about the
Sure.
open to work banner.
Sure.
And I'm going to give credit to Kevin Turner. He was with us in June, and he recommended that the open to work banner is, yes, critical to have, but it will work even better if you take it off and repost it periodically. And when you do that, you rise to the top of recruiters' open to work people. So what I'm saying is, take it down and then put it back up. And Kevin Turner knows a lot about the algorithm. So I trust him when he says that he has tested a lot of these things out.
Yeah,
if don't leave it stagnant is what he's saying. If you leave it stagnant, there's all these other open to work people who are on top of you. Just
Right.
take it down, refresh it, and bring it up, just make a note for yourself in your calendar once a week or whatever
Right.
it takes to refresh it so you're top of the pile.
That is a great tidbit. Mindy, if you've got a link to that anywhere, I'll post that on this page.
Okay.
I'm going to assume it's got something to do with the way the algorithm works.
Yeah.
It needs to be reminded, hey, this guy or lady is still open to work.
Yeah.
But that's a great tidbit. I did not realize that. So good. Thank you for that. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has multiple subscriptions. It has the free version. There are multiple premium versions. There's a LinkedIn Navigator for larger enterprises. There's a thing called LinkedIn Recruiter, and I think there are even multiple levels of that. Most of the very large Fortune 1000, the recruiters use LinkedIn Recruiter. One of the things my understanding is that it allows recruiters much more flexibility in how they search for candidates. And my understanding, LinkedIn Recruiter uses the text in your headline as the first field it searches. And then the second field is your about section. So think about what's in your headline. You can see when I was looking for a job, it had a lot of keywords. I know this works because I typically ask a recruiter if they reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm curious, why did you reach out to me? So one of the jobs I was looking for was an IoT related role. Several of the recruiters said, oh, I put in IoT in my search keywords, and you came up in the top 10 candidates. And I said, thank you, because I did that on purpose. So it does work. Just be aware of that and think about that. Okay, connection request. This is open to free and premium users. My understanding, LinkedIn allows you virtually unlimited connection requests. I'm sure there's a limit. Don't send out 10,000 in a day. Don't write your own bot. No bots allowed. But I've never reached the limit. Maximum of 300 characters. and you cannot attach files. You can use tiny URL if you're not familiar with to shorten the URL. So back to your question, Mindy. If I'm going to use a connection request, here's what I would say to a hiring manager. In this case, I'm asking who the hiring manager or the recruiter was, but you'll see, I think in the in-mails, I have some examples tailored for a hiring manager. I come right out and say, hello, we've not met. You don't know me. Please accept this as an intro. Will you tell me who the hiring manager is? You will be shocked. There's 3 to 5% of people out there that will give you that information. So in-mails are only open to premium users. And the nice thing about, well, the interesting thing about in-mails is you don't have to be connected to send an email, but it is only for premium users. You can add more characters and you can attach files. You do only get, and in-mails are a function of premium. If you have the free version, you don't get in-mails. Another reason to have a premium version. And you get a certain number of in-mail credits, they're called, per month. This is probably the most important thing that I've figured out, and it may be documented, but I haven't really found it. What I'm calling this premium loophole. I mean, in-mails premium loophole. So bear with me, hopefully I can explain this. There's a concept that you have within your premium profile. And by the way, I think it's a terrible name because the name's even confusing. You have this thing called open profile. And in the bigger deck, I have a link to where that is in your profile, or you can Google it. But you have everybody that's got a premium account, there's an open profile setting. If the open profile is set to open, then you can send an in-mail to another premium user and not use one of your in-mail credits. And I've done that many times. If the open profile is closed, then you've got to use one of your in-mail credits or go back to sending them a connection request. The video on this page is very good and talks about what I just went through. It's a little confusing. So you may be saying, well, Jeffrey, that sounds great. How do I tell if someone I want to reach out to, whether their open profile is open or their open profile is closed? I haven't been able to figure out what the default is. So I don't know if the default is open or closed. So I don't know, Brian. We've never connected. He's a premium user. If I go to send him a message, you see the circle on the bottom right. If it says that you're going to have to use one of your in-mail credits, it means his open profile is closed. So I've got to decide if I want to reach out to him, do I want to use one of my in-mail credits? By the way, if you don't use them all up 1 month, they will roll over to the next month. So you can see in that example, I had used one, so I had 1 of 4 left. So I got to decide, do I want to reach out to Brian? But for example, of Scott, when I go to send him a message, you see the bottom right, it says free message. And if you click on why it's free, it goes through what I just talked about. So I have never really seen this well documented, but this is a great way you could reach out to other people on LinkedIn, assuming they're a premium user that you're not connected to, and you don't have to use an in-mail credit. So to me, this is the best nugget I've gone through for the whole presentation. I don't know if you agree or not.
Jeffrey, I'm going to step in for a moment. We're
Sure.
almost at 10:02, so I want to make sure we have time for questions.
Sure.
One of the questions we had was if you're going to be sharing this deck, will you give us the ability to share this deck after the call? We're going to be putting the link into my post. How do you want to share the deck?
Well, I'm going to have the link at my last slide. You can always reach out to me. If you have the link, I should have probably given this to you before. Not the short link to this deck, but the link that's out on my LinkedIn profile. If you can get that, Mindy, you can post it. But I have it on the last deck.
Okay.
If it all fails and you can't get it, just send, I'm on LinkedIn a lot every day. Just send me a message. And oh, by the way, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, if you'll notice, many of you got a connection request from me last night. So we're probably connected. If we're not, send me a connection request. I'd love for you to get the deck and give me some feedback. It's out, open to the public. Does that
Okay,
answer the
so-
question, Mindy?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much. And we will
Sure.
definitely put that into the post when I do that
Okay.
tomorrow. So 2 other things.
Oh.
Lori's reminding everyone to save the chat today by clicking on the 3 dots next to the smiley emoji button. If everyone doesn't know how to do that, please save today's chat. There's a lot of good information in there, number 1. Number 2, another question for Jeffrey was, and one of the questions was, I've heard from recruiters that they don't ever open the emails because they get too many of them. What do you say to that?
Well, that's probably true. I'd go back to my 3 to 5% is considered successful. You don't need every recruiter to open them. They're not. You're going to get rejected. This is kind of why I went through that. You're going to get rejected 95 to 97% of the time. It's normal. It's life. It's reality. Don't take it personally. But you should get a 3 to 5% response rate. And that's what I got. So if one recruiter, let's say, doesn't respond, there's usually more than one. What I would do is I would cut and paste. I would copy this text. I'd have it in a draft, so I didn't have to retype it every time. And typically, the only thing that changed was the person's name and their role. You're free to use this text if you like. I have played with it a lot. The other advantage in InMail is you have a lot more text and you can attach files. So again, back to the previous question, this is some language. Yeah, the one on the left, what I was reaching out to a hiring manager. So that's what I said to a hiring manager. The one on the right, someone, I don't know if it was a hiring manager or recruiter, posted the role on LinkedIn because I saw it on LinkedIn. So yeah, it's a numbers game. You got to be consistent. You're going to get rejected a lot. But if you do this, you will get responses. This methodology does work. Does that help, Mindy?
I think so. I can't see now who asked that question, but would you like to speak? I don't see.
It
Laura,
was
do you
me,
see who-
Joan, and yes, it did help. Thank you all very much.
Okay, beautiful. All right, Jeffrey, what I would recommend is let's take down the deck for now.
Well, I was on, that was my last chart. This is
Okay,
the,
beautiful, perfect.
yeah, this is a tiny URL link. You could actually take a screenshot of this, or maybe Lori, if if there's a question, I'll go ahead and put both of these URLs in the chat. But
Perfect.
right now, I was ready for questions.
Perfect. So let's pull down the deck, just shut down the deck if you don't
Right.
mind.
Sure.
So that we can see each other a little bit.
Sure. Let me stop sharing.
Perfect. There we go. Excellent.
All
Okay,
questions are welcome.
so now's the time to ask your questions. Just raise your hand if you like, if you don't want to put it into the chat or put it in the chat, and we'll call on people. I see some folks who joined a little later. I'm happy to see you. Neil and David, welcome. And Raymond, didn't see you earlier either. Denise, hi, welcome. So what do you want to ask Jeffrey? He's been through this. I'll ask you a question, Jeffrey, until we,
Sure.
oh, Joan has a question. Go, Miss Joan. I'll go after you. Go
Okay,
ahead.
yes. When Jeffrey talked about how just now about using the template, cutting and pasting, and just changing the names. When you, is that a feature? Is that something you can do with the regular LinkedIn as far as saving as a draft, or would you have to have a premium to do that?
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I was talking about using Notepad.
Okay, no problem.
Completely
you.
outside of LinkedIn.
Okay, got it.
Notepad or Word or anything like that. If you can save it as a draft in your email client. Yeah, so no, it's not a feature of LinkedIn. Sorry if I wasn't clear. Does that help?
Does that help, Joan?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Angel Shaw has her hand raised.
Thank you, Mindy. I just wanted to echo Jeffrey's comments and direction shared with Joan. It really works. I have a Word document and I copy, paste, and customize probably now 24 different letters based on the role and what exactly they're looking for regarding the skill set and job expectations, et cetera. It really is great because you are copy pasting, and don't forget to include your LinkedIn linked at the bottom along with your contact information. It's just so much more simplistic when you're copying and pasting after you customize that into the messages. And that's with or without premium. It could just be straightforward through LinkedIn. So thanks, Jeffrey, for reiterating that, because it really does work.
Yeah. Let me just say one thing back to Joan. So I've had people say, Jeffrey, you got 20 years in sales. You got chutzpah. You talk a lot. You're a good communicator. Hopefully you'll agree. And I don't know you, but I'm kind of assuming maybe the question was coming from, it may be kind of forcing you out of your comfort zone to be a little more aggressive, to be a little more salesy. It's okay. You're good. Like I said before, think of it as a sales marketing campaign. No one else is going to be your advocate better than you. And don't assume. And if you look in the bigger deck, I talk about this. And I apologize to any recruiters on the call. Don't assume the recruiter is going to be your advocate. Because, oh, by the way, you're not the only candidate for the role. So it is your responsibility to be your own advocate. I'm not saying be cocky. I'm not saying to be obnoxious. I'm not saying to be aggressive. You've got to be professional, but it is your responsibility to be your own advocate. That has taken me a long time to learn. So I'll pass it on to you. I don't know if you agree with that, Mindy.
I do. Be professional and be persistent. Two things
Exactly.
are really important. Be professional and be persistent. And I'll add another
Exactly.
thing. Be polite, professional, polite, and persistent. Don't forget the persistent part, because if you give up, then someone else is going to come in your place.
Exactly.
I see another hand raised, and that's Denise Jackrow. Denise, would you like to come on? Oh, there she is. Welcome. What question do you have for Jeffrey?
Hi, thanks. Okay, so there's a lot of controversy with returnships and career breaks, depending on who I talk to. So I have the open to work. I've been applying to returnships. I've also been applying to entry level. There are a couple organizations, Path Forward and iRelaunch. I have a lot of respect for them, but they want me to use the hashtag returner, returnship, hashtag Path Forward, hashtag iRelaunch. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah,
You
because
know,
I haven't done that yet.
yeah, I'll give you my opinion,
Yeah,
but Mindy is probably a better person.
Okay.
If you haven't figured this out, I'm kind of opinionated. I have strong opinions.
I think I met you through other Zoom groups. And I have a
Yes,
lot of respect for you. You're a straight shooter. You tell it like it is. You don't mince words.
Thank you.
But you're also professional.
Thank you. Because there have been gaps in my resume. You ever heard the phrase honesty is the best policy?
Yes. Do you believe
Be
in that?
honest, but have a story.
Oh, I have
honest.
the stories.
Well, have a short story.
It's a short story.
Nobody's interested in a novel.
Right.
When I say short story, 3 to 5 sentences. I was not working for this period of time because boom, boom, boom. Move on. Less is more.
Is that
They're
part
not
of
interested in your life story.
the star, the whole situation test? Like, are you
You mean
a
the
fan
star?
of that?
The STAR method in answering a question? My opinion, it's overkill. Recruiters don't need that. You should have, and if you look in the big deck, you should know, okay, look in the big deck. I talk about this.
Okay,
You're an adult. You've got to be your own advocate.
I
It's
agree.
hard to be objective about yourself. I want to think we're all adults. My wife doesn't think I'm much of an adult at times, but that's another story. You should know what I call your perceived weaknesses. This is an old sales phrase. You don't lead with your perceived weaknesses. You lead with your strengths,
Right.
but you need to have an answer when someone brings up a perceived weakness, which they will. The worst thing is for a crew to say, oh, Denise, I saw you didn't work for these two years. Why is that? You don't want to go, oh, that's a good question. Well, hubba, bam, 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 and then move on. Because
Yeah.
oftentimes, and I talk about this in the big deck, they're just going through a checklist. They just want to hear you answer the question. They honestly don't really care what the answer is. But you need a short, concise, professional answer. Do not, the worst thing, in my opinion, and this is the worst thing in a sales call, not that you can anticipate all your customers' objections, it's called objection handling. You need to think about ahead of time, well, what's this customer most likely to bring up? And I better have an answer for that. And if you don't, that's okay. You say, you know, that's a great question. I don't have an answer. I'm not going to make one up. I'll get back to you. But you really ought to know most of your perceived weaknesses. You really need to have a short and sweet answer. Period. Does that help?
That helps tremendously. Thank you.
I'll let you
So-
add to that, Mindy.
Absolutely. So Denise, I will add to that. You need to know yourself inside and out better than anyone else. And so when Jeffrey talks about leading with your strengths, you need to know what is important about what you're going to bring value to that company that you're applying to, right? And your backstory, which is why you perhaps were out of work for a period of time, should be secondary. They're really looking for, what can you bring to us, right? What can you do for me today? How will you make me look good? How's your recruiter going to look good? The backstory is just something you need to be aware of. And like Darren just said, stuff happens. We all have lives, right? And things happen. So just have a really clear, succinct reason, and any objection that you think will come up. I don't know. We need.
I know. I mean,
You need to have what you've done in the past. So if you were out of work for 2 years, but you ran the newsletter for your church, that's important information, right? Those are
Right.
important.
I mean, it's been an extended career break, over 20 years, and I had I was my daughter's advocate, and she was going to school on the opposite coast. So I had project manager, I had someone redo my resume, and I said, what about momager? Like, make it cute because I'm going into TV and film. So I said, instead of having project manager, then having everything I did for my daughter, why not put momager, since she is in the TV and film industry herself, and have it be cutesy and not feel like I have to do a dance and come up with different scenarios, rather than say, yes, I was my daughter's advocate for over 20 years, and now she's in a great place and she's working and she's on her own. And now it's my chance to focus on me. And I know I would be a tremendous asset to your company as a customer service advocate.
Great. I love this. So we are a little bit past the hour, Jeffrey. I'm so grateful to you for
Yes, thank you both.
sharing your experience. And I think if you see the chat, and Jeffrey should share the chat also, should save the chat rather, so that he can read it. Lots of really good, positive thoughts. Appreciate your time and the trouble you put through to make this kind of presentation for job seekers.
Right.
We appreciate all of you. Lori, can you open the gallery up, please? So we can see.
So Mindy, I don't know if you have the time, but I have a few minutes. If anybody, I know people want to be sensitive, people need to drop, that's fine. But
Absolutely.
anybody that wants to stay on, I'll be happy to try to, if they want to ask a question, I'll be happy to try to answer.
Thank you.
Well, let me say one more thing about Denise. Are you still on?
Yeah, she's here.
One of the things I've learned, by the way, I don't want to give the impression I haven't crashed and burned. I've crashed and burned many times, but I've always kind of vowed to myself, okay, I'm human. I made a mistake. I don't ever want to make that mistake again, and learn from your mistakes. One of the things I've learned, and working with a lot of different customers. Anything that pops in your head or you think is going to be an objection or a question, no matter how far-fetched, a customer will ask you. There have been many times I've thought to myself, my customer's never going to ask me that question. They'd be crazy. Guess what? That's their second question. So that's why you kind of have to over prepare. And if you have 10 things that you can respond to and you've thought them out and you only need to use 5, well, you're so much further ahead. But you don't want to be caught with the 5 that you don't have and look dull. That was one of the things that would drive me crazy when I knew I looked dull and I didn't do my due diligence. Yes, you're human. You can't, I don't think any of us can predict the future, but if you don't do your due diligence and you look dull, shame on you, in my opinion.
Okay, with that, we are thrilled to have you here. Love to see you next month. Mark your calendar, September 6th. Jeffrey, thank you so much. We hope you major success in your career, and we wish the same thing for you all. And just be ready to accelerate everything you do now, accelerate for the future. I wish you a wonderful August day. See you in September.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'm copying the chat.
Good.
Thank you.
Jeffrey, thanks again so much. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Talk to you later.
Bye now.